For decades, Joel Osteen stood as the face of modern faith, smiling, positive, and endlessly hopeful. His message was simple: believe in yourself, trust in God, and your best life will unfold before you. From Houston to Hollywood, millions tuned in weekly to hear his words of encouragement. But behind the polished sermons and the picture-perfect image, a storm was brewing. From financial controversies and accusations of greed to a growing belief that his church had strayed far from biblical roots, Osteen's empire began to crack. The man who preached abundance suddenly faced an avalanche of criticism, raising one question: had Joel Osteen's success story turned into a warning for faith in the age of fame? Born into faith and family legacy, Joel Osteen's journey began on March 5, 1963, in Houston, Texas, inside a home filled with faith and ambition. He was one of 6 children born to John and Dodie Osteen, a couple whose devotion to God would later shape an entire generation. His father had once been a traditional Southern Baptist pastor, but in 1959, John left that world behind to start something different: Lakewood Church. It began humbly, in a converted feed store with only a couple hundred seats, but the spirit that filled it was powerful. Joel grew up watching his parents handle loss, sickness, and struggle through faith alone. When his sister Lisa was born with disabilities, it didn't destroy their resolve. It deepened it. This was the environment that raised Joel, a family that believed in miracles, persistence, and a purpose that could outlast pain. A quiet observer turned visionary. Unlike his father, Joel didn't grow up dreaming of preaching. He was shy, soft-spoken, and far more comfortable behind the scenes. After high school, he attended Oral Roberts University, studying radio and television, but dropped out early to pursue something more practical: producing church broadcasts. At only 19, he returned to Houston to build Lakewood's television ministry from the ground up. It was a quiet role, but a vital one. Joel edited sermons, directed lighting, and made sure every broadcast looked professional. Long before he ever took the pulpit, he was already shaping Lakewood's image, ensuring its message reached beyond the church walls. He didn't yet realize it, but his passion for storytelling and his media instincts would one day turn Lakewood into one of the most watched ministries in the world. A tragedy that changed everything. Joel's path changed forever in January 1999. After years of saying no to his father's invitations to preach, Joel finally agreed to deliver one sermon. Nervous but determined, he stepped onto the stage and spoke from the heart. Just 6 days later, tragedy struck. His father, Pastor John Osteen, suffered a fatal heart attack. The church and the family were left devastated. With no one to lead, all eyes turned to Joel, the son who had never trained for ministry. Against all odds, he stepped up. In June 1999, Joel Osteen became the senior pastor of Lakewood Church. His soft-spoken optimism was unlike his father's fiery sermons, but people connected with it. Within 5 years, Lakewood tripled in size. What began as a small family church had become America's largest congregation, drawing over 30,000 people every week. Building a spiritual empire. Joel's next step was monumental. He wanted to bring Lakewood to the world. In 2003, he leased the Houston Rockets' former arena, the Compaq Center, a symbol of Texas glory, and spent nearly $95 million transforming it into a modern church. When the new Lakewood opened in 2005, it seated over 16,000 people, with millions more watching online. The atmosphere was electric, more like a concert than a traditional service. Osteen's message wasn't about sin or guilt. It was about hope, purpose, and success. His best-selling book, Your Best Life Now, published in 2004, captured that message perfectly. Within months, it sold millions of copies and stayed on bestseller lists for years. Joel became more than a preacher. He became a brand. He toured arenas across the world, appeared on Oprah and Larry King Live, and became the smiling face of modern faith, the gospel of prosperity and controversy. But as his influence grew, so did criticism. Osteen's message, often called the prosperity gospel, taught that faith, positivity, and words could bring wealth and success. To millions, it was empowering. To others, it was dangerous. Traditional Christian leaders accused him of preaching comfort instead of conviction, calling it Christianity without a cross. They argued that Osteen's teachings turned religion into self-help, ignoring sin, repentance, and suffering, central parts of the faith. Theologians dubbed it the cotton candy gospel, sweet but spiritually empty. Still, Osteen remained unfazed. "I'm here to encourage people," he often said. His optimism drew crowds even as critics called his church a business disguised as a ministry. To his followers, he was proof that faith could be uplifting. To his detractors, he was the symbol of everything wrong with modern religion. Money, mega-churches, and mounting questions. Lakewood's financial success was staggering. With an annual budget nearing $90 million, the church became a spiritual empire, but one that spent heavily on itself. Reports showed that only around 1% of donations went to missions or direct charity work. Meanwhile, over $30 million was spent on weekly services, $25 million on television broadcasts, and millions more on events like Night of Hope. Osteen himself stopped taking a salary from the church in 2005, but his books, tours, and merchandise brought him an estimated net worth of $100 million. His Houston mansion, worth over $16 million, and lavish lifestyle drew public outrage. Supporters argued that his success reflected God's blessings. Critics saw hypocrisy, a preacher of prosperity living in abundance while his church gave little to the poor. The contrast between his words and his wealth grew impossible to ignore. Hurricane Harvey and a crisis of image. In August 2017, Hurricane Harvey devastated Houston. As floodwaters rose, thousands of families were left homeless. And Lakewood Church's doors remained closed. The internet erupted in anger, accusing Osteen of ignoring his own community. Images of the massive church sitting dry and empty while victims sought shelter elsewhere became viral symbols of hypocrisy. Osteen later explained that the church had been unsafe due to flooding concerns, and that it opened as soon as conditions allowed. Still, the damage to his reputation was severe. For many, the incident exposed the gap between his message of compassion and his real-world actions. It became a defining moment, a reminder that faith without empathy can crumble under pressure. What once felt like divine success now looked like polished neglect. Financial scandals and public backlash. Just when the outrage began to fade, another controversy reignited the fire. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Lakewood Church accepted a $4.4 million Paycheck Protection Program loan from the U.S. government, money intended to help struggling small businesses. For a church with multi-million-dollar reserves and a pastor worth tens of millions, the move was seen as tone-deaf. Critics accused Osteen of greed and manipulation. Though Lakewood eventually repaid the loan, the trust had been broken. Then came another blow. A 2011 lawsuit from a band accusing the church of using their music without permission. The pattern was becoming clear. Osteen's ministry wasn't just a church anymore. It was a machine, polished, profitable, and increasingly detached from its roots. Family, fame, and the future of faith. Behind the cameras and controversy, Osteen's family continued to grow in the spotlight. His wife, Victoria, became co-pastor and author of her own best-selling books. Their children, Jonathan and Alexandra, both stepped into ministry through music and worship. Together, they presented an image of strength and unity, the perfect family leading a modern faith movement. But whispers from inside Lakewood suggest growing tension. Some insiders say Joel's relentless focus on branding has caused burnout and conflict among staff. Others claim that his empire has become too dependent on image to survive real scrutiny. Whether true or not, one thing is certain. The Osteen family has built something larger than themselves, something that may one day outlast even their presence. The man behind the smile. Joel Osteen's story is one of contrasts.